Welcome to Beyond Rockets. Hope you're having a great day. My name is Clark Dunn and I'm your host. Get ready to enjoy some awesome conversations from Huntsville locals about cool work they're doing right here in the Rocket City. You can connect with us on social media at Beyond Rockets, and if you're interested in doing a podcast yourself, I'd love to hear from you. You can visit my website, beyondrockets.com today, or connect with me on LinkedIn at Clark Dunn. Sit back and enjoy this episode of Beyond Rockets. This episode is brought to you by NexGen Crane Rigging. Since 2018, NexGen has been lending a lifting hand across the Southeast as a full-service crane, rigging, and transport company. Their mission is clear: cultivate a creative team and provide innovative solutions to finish every job efficiently and safely. NexGen's commitment to safety and strong partnerships has earned them recognition across the industry. From the first plan to the final lift, NexGen gives you the peace of mind with solutions you can trust. Learn more at nextgencrane.com, and all this information will be in the episode notes. This episode is sponsored by Yellowhammer Brewing. Yellowhammer is a local craft brewery serving Huntsville for the past 14 years. They are known for their premium craft beers like their T-Minus and Rebellion, but what you might not know is they also offer spirits, wine, seltzers, and non-alcoholic drinks. Next time you stop by their location, try one of their seasonal cocktails made with the Gemini Bourbon or the Yellowhammer Vodka. Or try this year's big hit, Pineapple Punch Seltzer. You can find out more information about Yellowhammer Brewery by visiting their website, yellowhammerbrewery.com, or visiting their tap room located at Campus 805. Well, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Rockets. We have a familiar face back on the podcast, but it's for a little different of a topic and a little different conversation. Welcome back, Larry Lowe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Times have changed from our first podcast. Looking forward to getting into it.
So we're talking a little bit about you becoming the CIO for the City of Huntsville, but before we kind of dive into what that looks like, talk a little bit about kind of your background and expertise leading up to that position.
Sure, for sure. So CIO, Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Huntsville. How did I get to now? Interesting question. Sometimes I ask myself that. So I guess we had to, really back up to, from the beginning, the origin story, I guess. So, born and raised here in Huntsville, grew up in South Huntsville, went to Grissom. My two, things that I really did a lot in high school was math team and soccer. Those are the two things that I was heavily involved with, right?
And you're still involved with a lot of soccers too, with other leagues in town, like adult leagues, or you used to be.
Used to be, right? Our group, Hops, Huntsville Old People Soccer, we actually quit out of the league here, and we actually meet at an undisclosed location on Sundays and just play the soccer that we want to play, which is what everybody wants right now. So it's when you're this age, you got to be careful with how much you run and what you do. So anyway, had an opportunity to play soccer in college, and also had an academic scholarship to Auburn. And you kind of weigh those two things, and it was pretty obviously which one was going to carry me further in life. And so went to Auburn, got bachelor's, master's, PhD in electrical engineering, and I was way more interested in the math side than the electron power generation, all of that kind of side. So signals and systems, detection and estimation theory, really looking at signal and noise, or information, information purity was kind of what I was really interested and really focused on. So got out of Auburn, moved back to Huntsville, actually moved back into South Huntsville. Some would say I haven't moved very far in life, given that I'm in the same neighborhood I was when I grew up.
There you go.
Yeah, my wife and I, we both are South Huntsville people.
Did you always know you were going to come back to Huntsville? Like, did you want to? Because I feel like a lot of the conversations, even up until probably the last, over the last 5 years, that's probably changed for people. But even like growing up for myself, it's like the whole thing with all my friends. It's like, hey, I'm going to go to college somewhere. I'm going to go to Auburn. I'm going to go to Alabama. I'm going to go to wherever, and I'm never going to come back. Did you think you were going to come back, or did you kind of just like the opportunities kind of came and it seemed like a good choice at that time?
Yeah, great question actually. Kind of both, right? I mean, because in the late 90s there was kind of this exodus. People that were in Huntsville were like, I'm moving, I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to go somewhere else. And the idea crossed my mind. Actually looked at going to a few out of state graduate school.
Okay.
Illinois was one, Ohio State was, just looking around at some of the different colleges that were out there. But perfect opportunity came about back at Auburn. And my wife and I got married right after undergraduate. And so family was in Huntsville, technical careers were in Huntsville. I mean, too many things were lining up, and it was just like, why would we not go back to Huntsville? And so went back to Huntsville, and it's perfect for us. And we're very, very happy. We've had 3 kids, raised them all. And Huntsville really is a great place to technically start your career and to raise your family. Yeah. But, back to the story. So, got out the first First place that I went to work was at Phase 4 Systems, which was a small radar hardware company. And had the incredible opportunity to be mentored by Dr. Mike Fahey. So he was just a technical leader. He's one of the owners of the company, and just for 8 years to be able to ride shotgun with somebody who had been in the career and really just had those back, after hours conversations about what does it mean to be a technical leader within a company. And just for 8 years, invaluable, somebody pouring into me in terms of what does leadership look like in a technical role.
Was there a misconception about leadership that he kind of told you that you thought about it as being in some sort of capacity, but then after having those because the 9 to 5 you can only do so much, and then it's that 5 to 9 conversations that are really the most valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I was young. I mean, so I wouldn't say I didn't have leadership figured out by any stretch of the imagination, right? But it was, how do you navigate uncomfortable conversations when you're the customer, you're dealing with it? How do you navigate, just culture within a company, all that, just, everything that it takes to be, is more of the intangibles, I guess, of being a leader. Technical is technical, and it's easy to kind of flow through that, but it's the intangibles that I think that, I really learned from Dr. Fahey. So that was great. So that was, learning how to be an executive. And then I got the opportunity to jump over to a small startup, Gator Technologies.
Yeah.
Paul Garros, president, invited me in. He was super creative.
Around what time was this?
Oh, okay. Wow. We have to do this is about 2008, I guess, about when I started.
And it was a pretty small
Gator.
Company at the time.
Yeah, I think I was the 7th or 8th employee, and they were on Lehman Ferry. That origin story is pretty fun as well. Renting space in the back of the wholesale flower shop, creating these thin film polymers that ended up being, turning into an inflatable satellite communications antenna. And so, having to take an idea and kind of fight the world to prove that this product works, that chip on your shoulder, really, showcasing it. I was the VP of engineering, so my first time in an executive seat, and but title didn't mean anything when you're a small startup. Yeah, you guys have got to do everything, right? Yeah, and so I was in charge of sales. Not in charge. I mean, Roy Priest was in charge of sales, but I had my pocket of customers that I was responsible for, and for the development, and for the certification.
You had to know a little bit about everything.
Yeah, I know a little bit about everything.
At the end of the day, it's the person that might know everything about that subject is already doing something else. So you kind of have to know a little bit, but not everything, but enough to help your customers be successful.
Yeah, and that's what startup culture is all about, right? I mean, it's really about just the hustle and getting the job done, whatever it takes, right? So you've just got to have that fight the world, run through wall mentality to get it done, and that's really the way that small business, a startup culture. I mean, that's what it's all about.
That was kind of like the first real did you know prior to going there that you enjoyed startup culture?
No, I really didn't. To be honest with you, I didn't.
But you left there with sort of this, your journey, and we'll continue to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of the tipping, that was the first exposure, but then you started doing a lot of other things.
It was the taste maybe I got of what startup culture can be, right? And so, so Gator went on. We ended up had a fantastic exit. We sold the company to Cubic Corporation out of San Diego. I had an agreement where I had to stay on for 3 years in the transition between the two companies. And for some reason, I was just extremely burned out. I mean, I was, in the engineering field, and I just needed something different. I wanted to do something to clear my head. And, at that point in time, I'd been homebrewing with one of my best friends. He lived 2 streets over, and we'd been homebrewing a bit. And, the building on Lehman Ferry, that used to be Old Town Brewing, and it's where Straight Dale got their start. And so I decided to buy that property and give a brewery a shot. Yeah. So started Fractal Brewing Project.
And 2019, right before COVID.
September 2019. So, perfectly situated 6 months before COVID. And so, that fantastic, I learned a ton. I mean, it was one of those instances in life that, we lasted for 4.5 years. But the lessons learned and the experience, it also crystallized a lot of I don't know, driving me in some regards, right? And so, setting up the brewery, ton of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Working with an architect and getting the aesthetic right, getting your brand right, actually working with the city to get your plans approved and working, and so, having all of that interface. I don't know, the setup was really, really exciting to me, and then the launch. Things were going great, and then COVID. I mean, COVID just, kind of kicked everybody in the kneecaps, and especially Me being, I'm not afraid to say it, but a naive operator in the food and beverage industry, food and beverage is hard.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it's impressive to see the people that have, multiple concepts with multiple industries. Like,
Yeah.
it's a tough industry to find people to to the longevity. Like,
Yeah.
it's could be considered even, I would say, almost tougher than just more of a tech startup in some realms.
In some regards, right? And maybe what one of my fallacies was that, hey, I was fairly successful over here being a technical leader. For sure that transfers. And some elements maybe do transfer, but man, you've got to know the industry you're getting into. You can't just naively wade into an industry and think that, hey, the success from over here is going to follow over here. So that was, in some regards, we didn't make it. And, I don't know. There's just as much of lessons learned, I would say, right? But so we're going along, and I could just tell that it wasn't what I was meant to do in some regards.
Because you were doing other you were slowly at the end of it starting to do other stuff outside of Fractal, like as more of like how your career would then pan out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think yes. And by the way, Clark ran social media for me. So he had a little bit of insight and did at Fractal, which is really cool actually to have the conversation.
Yeah, and it's fun because I have so many memories of Fractal working with y'all, and also we did a wedding party there when I was getting married. We did a podcast on stage live.
That was awesome.
Was a part of Sourtage and I sponsored that thing with y'all. There's so many memories of that space, and we were talking about it off air earlier. But my wife and I were just talking about Fractal last weekend.
No, the community development parts, it really did have its spot, and that's the. There's a lot that I do take away, and I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the team that worked there. I'm proud of everything that we did. But it just really, to me, the most fulfilling part was the community development part, and because it was received well. It did have its spot. We just couldn't make. And part of it was me realizing that I'm not doing what I was built to do, right? And I kept just having this internal itch that wasn't being scratched, and to the point, I knew something was up when I just happened to cross paths with the dean of the math departments at Calhoun.
Okay.
And we started talking. I was an adjunct professor at UAH when I got out of graduate school for about 5 or 6 semesters, and loved teaching, and just couldn't do that and be soccer coach to the kids and all. Only so much time in the day. But he asked me, he said, hey, we've got an open position. We're looking for somebody to come in and teach entry-level algebra. And I was like, I'll take it. So I just had that
scratch the itch.
I knew I needed to do something analytical again, right? I mean, it's just who I am. And so from there, I knew that was going to start pulling me away. And then the next, collision I guess I had was with Angie and Timo Sandritter. They're a power entrepreneur couple here in town.
Sure.
And they'd already started a company called Rippleworks, and it was growing. It was up and running and growing, and more and more it was, how do we organize our data? How do we start pulling insights out of our data?
And that's your bread and butter.
Again, back to the analytics. And so jumped on with them as chief scientist, and that was about 2021, I guess, that I jumped in with them. And a lot of micro survey data, and so it was we were trying to do just standard machine learning techniques to pull it out. And then November 22nd, 2022, which is GPT Day, is when the language models came out. And so as soon as they hit
everything,
it changed everything. And we were able to very early take the language models and put them to use. So we layered them into the product to be able to extract out from large amounts of unstructured survey data coming back, to be able to pull out what are the themes, and then dynamically classify them back into the themes and look at sentiment. I mean, so there was a lot that we were doing that we got to play with them right away, and you could just see, oh, holy smokes. I mean, this is going to change everything, and so fantastic opportunity with Rippleworks. They ended up recapitalizing with private equity back in March. Along that time, this is a long journey.
I know.
And I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
April 24 is when I had this article. So we have almost hit it.
How I got to now is almost there, but it all ties together here, I think. I hope. Along the way. So for about the last 19 months ago, the mayor set up the AI task force. And that was because, these tools are coming out. And the mayor, very forward-leaning Mayor Battles, and so he's like, I want to get a consortium together that can just help think through,
what this looks like.
If this is going to transition jobs, what can we do, in terms of education and workforce development? What can we be doing in education? What can we be doing for community engagement? What can we do in just looking at the, law and ethics of it? Just making sure that, we as the city are on our front foot. And so I was participating. I was one of the community engagement chair.
Okay.
And
because the task force was positioning a wide assortment of people.
Oh yeah, good points. I mean, it was everybody from government people, from the arsenal, from a lot of the different groups that are working out there. Commercial, and then we have Toyota, we have Hudson Alpha,
Yeah.
so we have medical, Huntsville Hospital. So I mean, it was very, very, very wide ranging.
Mhm.
It was just leaders, thought leaders in that area across all the industries of Huntsville, because we want to look out for all of the industry of Huntsville. Make sure, and this general purpose tool touches everything, right?
Mhm.
So we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just one sided. It's not just DoD or any of this other stuff. So yeah, wide ranging, and it was about March that he said, I think that I'm looking to have some sort of innovation officer as part of the city, just so that we can have that. And we're looking at it. That was about the time that RippleWorks recapitalized with private equity. And so I was like, you know what, this is a good opportunity to see. And so I just let it be known to somebody that I was interested in that position. And
I guess the rest is history as far as where we sit today in September of 2025.
That's right. So, I started May 1st in that position. And the details. You want to talk?
100%. So
details of the position.
So I have an article that I pulled up from April 24th. I think it was like the first announcement that you were becoming the CIO for the city of Huntsville, and it said that you have a 2-year consulting agreement. But that was interesting to me, and I want to talk a little bit about individually, is the areas or the people you report to, because you have multiple bosses.
Right.
You support multiple different areas, multiple different initiatives.
Right.
Talk a little bit about so the areas that you support: the City of Huntsville, Huntsville Utilities, and the Solid Waste Disposal Authority.
Right.
Talk a little bit about a little bit about as we sit in September. What have you kind of been working on individually with those 3 entities?
Yeah, good question. So just to back up a half step. So I mean, the position itself is I'm not an official employee of the City of Huntsville. I am a contractor.
Okay.
And I'm a contractor that is shared between those 3 entities. So the City of Huntsville, Huntsville Utilities, and the Solid Waste Disposal Authority. And I'm on a 2-year contract, and the mayor said, hey, let's architect this position together and see what it looks like. And at the end of 2 years, I'm hoping that we can transition it into a position, I don't know who, but, work on the position to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
So it can become a part of the leadership cabinet of the city, so it seems reasonable, which on one hand, kind of blue sky, it kind of makes sense. On the other hand, there's not a real detailed job description. So it's, I've got to be.
There's no blueprint. Every day's a little different.
Yeah.
And like this week has been a lot of doing things like this.
Yeah.
And talking to people about what you're doing.
Right.
But some days and some weeks don't look like this, probably.
That's right. And so one of the, why was I an attractive person for that job? Well, it goes back to, hardware background, software background, data background, which is everything that we, the innovation that we're looking at is more of a technology lens. And so those 3 parts of my background, and not only that, running Fractal, I actually had to go use city services, right? And so I had to, and Huntsville Utilities, right? I had to turn in my place. I had to get a business license. I had to get everything. And so I've been, I had to work with a lot of those departments. I failed gas 3 times, and so, it's just,
you learned a lot though.
I learned a lot. So again, I would say, so it's really the 3 components of my technical background.
Yeah.
And then also that. And so that's what made me attractive. So, what does the first 90 days look like, right? I mean, so I'm basically 4.5 months into it, and so the first 90 days, the mayor said, your job is situational awareness. You need to learn. There's 30 different departments in the city of Huntsville. I want you to meet every single department head.
Wow.
I want you to learn what that department is responsible for. And then my line of questions that I add to it is, okay, what's the technology stack that department is using to solve their day in, day out problems? And then what part of that tech stack is working well and what part of the tech stack is not working well, that they're having to either, using tribal knowledge and to get past certain things, or they're throwing bodies to make it work.
Was the what's not working well a hard thing for the department heads to acknowledge, or did most of it become pretty easy where this is definitely not working?
30 different departments. Let me say this is that I'm very impressed with the leadership that is at the department level.
Yeah.
They are delivering it highly. So Mayor Battle has got a very high performing team, right? And so that sets the bar for me is that I feel like I've really got to get a high, I got to try to just keep up with a lot of the department leads. So, very, very impressed with the leadership at the department level all across the city. But I'd say, what's interesting is that the stuff that's working works well, and that they're working. Every department is extremely process driven, right? Knows their process, knows what they're doing. They know it day in, day out. There are a couple parts that aren't working well. One department was operating off of an in-house product that they wrote some code back in the late 90s and were operating on an Access database. And those people have retired many times over, and so there's very few people that really know how it's working, and it's starting to crash.
It's working, but it doesn't really.
It's to the point that it's not even working now, right? And it's starting to affect, what that department's supposed to be doing. And so, one of the values that I'm bringing, is that, like I said, the department extremely trained, knows their process, knows what they're responsible for. Maybe not as equipped to create requirements documents for a lot of the modern softwares that are out there. And so I'm able to come in and say, okay, let's work on a requirements document. Let's gather them from multiple, if it does touch multiple departments, let's make sure that we're getting as much cross-departmental input into our requirements document. And then let's go have a conversation with vendors, right? Because I was a vendor on the outside at RippleWorks trying to sell into municipalities, right? And so I know what coded language is with other startups. If they say, hey, we want to co-develop that with you, all that means is that they don't have it on their roadmap and they want you to pay for it.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up with a product that's about 70% complete and both parties will be pretty unhappy. So, I know what questions to ask. I know where to poke and prod with the vendors and how to drive them to make sure that we're getting the product that we need as the city. That's going to, they fit us, as opposed to, here's our requirements, we'll try it out and we'll just accept what you've built. Right. Yeah. And so, so they have come forward with, hey, this isn't really working that well and we could use some help here. But more importantly, I think is, the tidal wave, the tsunami of AI, everything is hitting them in all directions. All of their softwares that they use to do their job are now, their vendors are coming back and saying, let me show you the new AI. They're wrapping AI into it. Yeah. And again, it's just, if you haven't really been studied on all of it, the hype can sound real, and the salespeople do their jobs. They sell you on the upside, but they're maybe not not aware, not talking about what the downsides could be. And so being able to be that internal resource to help sort through what is hype and what is help, it's another lens that I'm doing. And so what I've come away after the first 90 days of really having a deep dive into how cities work. And oh my gosh, fascinating. So, coming from the commercial world that you can make decisions extremely fast, you get the C-suite together.
Especially at the level, like when you started at Gator, it's like, there's 7 of you. So if you wanted to make a decision, it didn't take hours, days, weeks, months. Right. It took a few minutes.
It's exactly right. Yeah. You see what's in the best interest of your organization and you move, right? And so it's been a little bit of a lessons learned for me of working, of what does working in a municipal operation look like? Yeah. Because of the layers of stakeholders. Now we have the citizens. We represent the citizens. So we've got to listen. We got to make sure. Yeah. The will of the council. The council is the one who ultimately decides what contracts we can and can't get into. The department. So there's just layers and layers, which it is what it is. It's not a good, it's not a bad. It's just making decisions just has a longer tail to it just because there's so many more stakeholders that are involved. And so that's been kind of just fascinating on a lot of levels to kind of get into. And so, my benefit, the main lens that all 3 organizations have said, here's what's going on in Huntsville and why we think we need to see a chief innovation officer right now. Huntsville, it's no mystery. Huntsville is growing rapidly in population, but it's also growing in land area.
Right. 4 counties now, I think.
4 counties, there's land getting annexed in, and so, that growth in those 2 dimensions, it requires you to strategically think, how can we maintain or extend city services given the cost constraints that we have? Yeah. And so, strategically introducing technology is the answer to kind of help us maintain and extend those city services, given all of the fiscal constraints and the growth constraints and everything else that are kind of squeezing the city in certain ways. And so that's, that applies to both, the city, Huntsville Utilities and solid waste.
Yeah. And so obviously you've been in it for, in that first 90 days, kind of looking at where we sit today in September. Yeah. Has there been sort of like as you've met with all the department heads and you've started to kind of, figure out ways to integrate innovation and integrate AI or integrate sort of, a more streamlined effect to help their workflow? Has there been like an aha moment or something that you've already been able to accomplish in a particular department that you've seen the success from doing something like this already? Or is a lot of this stuff still kind of in motion where we haven't seen necessarily the full results of what you've been doing, but things are happening on the back end?
The answer is yes, in a weird way. And I know yes wasn't what you asked. So, there's really 3 dimensions that I'm working on in terms of where does technology apply. So one, I described on the per department level, they're very fixed in their processes, and so it's like, where can Where can technology help water pollution control? Where can technology help public works, right? I mean, do their job better. And so you got to learn before you can start.
Yeah.
You just don't come, inserting technology before what's going on. So I've had to, just listen a lot to what each department does before coming in and try to make suggestions.
Like,
right?
hey, do this, but you don't really know what they actually
It's
do.
the last thing I'd want to be doing, right? And so there's some projects that have been emerging at the per department level. And again, the one that was kind of like the highest one is one I just talked about, was the department that was using an Access database. Yeah, it's starting to crash. And so really helping them get the proper SaaS software tool in hand to do their job. So helping out with that, and that's kind of like high priority, working through right now. A second dimension I would say is kind of horizontally across all departments. Where can we bring that efficiency at the enterprise level? And so that's where your generative AI tools come in, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, we're all using either ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or all of the other, right? I mean, it's you bring in your bot of choice.
And
right?
it's hard to not be engulfed in some sort of AI on a day-to-day basis.
Right, because we each see the efficiency that it brings on just some of those rote things that we do day in, day out, right? And so working with the city, working with the ITS department, we do have an AI use policy in hand now for the city. And we're looking to introduce, their Microsoft shop. We're on the GCC license since we are a municipality. We've got to make sure that our data is protected and that we've got, we have a security posture that's a little more robust than what a lot of the private companies can work through, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking to leverage the Microsoft Copilot as much as we can, get that introduced. So there's, make sure that you got your use policy in place, and then communicate it. And we're kind of in the middle of this right now, communicating it. And then train them. I mean, what I want to do is each department just listen and say, where is everybody, finding that efficiency using the tools today, making sure that we've got all those use cases, and then, introduce a tool that they can use that's city approved, if you will, with Microsoft Copilot. We're going to have some sort of enterprise, a little bit more robust, either ChatGPT or Gemini for some of the super users, but it's all going to be very much controlled by the ITS department. So, just kind of like, how do you properly introduce those at the municipal level? So that's what we're doing horizontally. And then the third dimension is more interfacing with the public. What are the services that we provide, and are there tools that we can introduce that would allow us to solve problems quicker, or just kind of like I don't know, just be that forward-thinking and anticipatory of where to, address problems, as opposed to being reactionary of, people, reporting and sending emails to the mayor or to city council. Is just, where can we get in front of that and take care of problems quicker? So yeah, and that probably leads to the next topic here.
100%. And so it's interesting. One thing that's interesting is you talk about like the AI in general, and kind of want to stay on that for a second. There's a quote in this article from April that was a pretty interesting quote, and I think I do a podcast for a AI podcast for somebody else, and I get to kind of like be on the forefront from their perspective and also using it. But this quote I thought was amazing. It says, AI is a tool that we need to become familiar with. Part of the challenge is that the technology is changing so fast that it can be hard to get your footing. But the genie is not going back in the bottle, and AI has become a part of our day-to-day work. How do you approach the conversation? Kind of a two-part. How do you approach the conversation that people might have of, is AI taking my job?
Right.
And two, how do you as an AI expert, CIO for the City of Huntsville, continue to educate yourself on AI?
Yeah, both great questions. I do feel like I'm an apostle in certain ways, right? Speaking to what AI can do, and so where does that start? It starts with teaching lunch and learns at church. I had one like 4 months ago that they're, the retirees, and there's like 70 of them, and they get together for lunch once a month, and they had me as a guest speaker. And so none of them really, or they've been hearing about what the media wants to tell you. And what's the story the media is going to tell you? It's whatever is going to get you into the biggest fight, because that's what media wants these days, right? So all they hear is the negative downside, and they hear the scary parts, and there are. I definitely don't want to downplay it. We got to pay attention to both, but really showcasing what it can do, and just to make people realize that this is the most general purpose tool that has ever been created in mankind. And what that means is it applies to, my parents in their, upper 70s, just as much as it applies to my daughter that's at Auburn studying right now, as it does to, name a demographic and name an occupation. And this general purpose tool, you will find value and upside in this tool, right? But the problem is, I don't know, Clark, have you ever read the instruction manual of the ChatGPT?
No.
because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and so what they did is they created these general purpose tools, and they just kind of like shrugged their shoulders and said, I don't know, give it a try.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
what happens.
see what happens, and so a lot of people started going, use case 1, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. Use case 2, and everybody has that mind blowing moment using it, and they see what it can actually do for them. Right. That would be the upside, and so, but more and more now that everybody's using it, and I'll tell you, my personal belief is that I am a techno optimist, just for the record, but I do believe that we have a moral, ethical obligation to engage these technologies, because I believe that we, the people, collectively define what proper tool use is. Right. And so I think that, having your head in the sand, or ignoring what, the use cases are, that's the exact wrong approach. Right. I mean, if you've got kids in school, sit down with them and just bring sunlight to the situation. Hey, how are you using AI? Just walk me through it. Show me some of the stuff. Teach me, learn me. Get in the soup and swim with your kids if you're doing it. Right. Because there are, the companion AIs. Some upside, but there's also a lot of negative side. That's extreme downside that we need to be aware of, right? And so that's the type feedback that I think that collectively we've got to be engaging these tools, just so that we can drive what proper use is. And so, is AI coming for your job? I mean, it's hard to tell. There's going to be some disruption, right? I mean, you'd see. Writing software is one of the functions that's kind of closed loop. You can tell when software works, and these models are extremely, extremely good now at writing code. Is it going to affect some of the job market? Yeah, so there's going to be some short-term displacement of jobs over the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. I think that once we get through this, like all the other technical, revolutions that we've gone through, it's going to be upside to all economies.
It's also going to create new jobs. That's
going to create new jobs, right? But I'm also not going to ignore the fact that there might be some disruption in the middle, and so that's why I do applaud the mayor for starting up the task force, so that we can at least be listening, see where they are, where can we start doing some upskilling, where can we do some job transition, just to try to get in front of it. So there is going to be a little bit of disruption, but I think that ultimately, like most technologies, it's going to, we thrive because technology continues to evolve.
And like from the task force perspective, or from your perspective as CIO, is there work being done already within the city school system to kind of educate kids, not only at the college level or secondary education level, but at the intermediate level of, hey, here's AI, here's how you can use it, and here's how to use it appropriately?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not something that, especially as like kids are in, middle school.
Right.
And they're it's something to get on the forefront than to wait until they're in college.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it only takes your friend one time of showing that you can take a picture in ChatGPT of the geometry problem, and it solves it without even you having to do
100%.
anything. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I probably would have gone, it's the easy button.
That's amazing. Let's
do it. Yeah. But yes, we do not need to outsource our critical thinking. Right. I keep, my approach is these are co-companion, co-development, co-creation tools. But it's got to be co-creation. You cannot outsource critical thinking to these. Yeah. And once you evolve that, I think that's the proper framing to work with these tools as we go forward. So what, the AI task force, we've got an entire group that's focused on STEM and education, and the director, Randy Sparkman, doing a fantastic job. He actually created and hosted a symposium right before school started for school teachers, and they had, I believe it was 180 teachers that attended from 40 different school systems in North Alabama. Wow. There's a hunger. Teachers have a hunger to want to, what is proper use, what is proper teaching, so everybody kind of gets the taste of it at home, and they see where it applies to their job. But school systems, I mean, are the time constants of change are so mismatched right now. AI is accelerating so fast.
Yeah.
There's one stat that said that if the foundation labs quit producing models today, there's 5 to 7 years of catching up, of just applying this technology to business in general, right?
Wow.
But they're continuing to accelerate. School systems usually make decisions on the order of decades, right? And so how do the mismatch of technology evolution with the speed with which education institutes usually make decisions, it's a big mismatch, but they're wrestling with it, and that's what I really appreciate. Huntsville City Schools has a CIO, and she's doing a very good job. All the systems are looking at this to say, how do we apply it equitably, right? You don't want to make sure that one group's getting more or educated more than the other. So you got to look at making sure that it's equitable across everybody, and that you've got some guardrails as to what you're doing. So they're working with it. And then, just yesterday I got to speak I was a guest lecturer at a business class at UAH. And so working with those, higher level, just to talk about, okay, you guys have seen it, you see where it does apply, or you're learning where it applies, where are you excited about, what are your concerns, everything, just to work through that and to see what their projects are is actually fascinating. So a lot of creativity at the college level to applying it, which I really applaud the way that a lot of the colleges are engaging it. But K through 12, it's a tough problem that I think that we all need to be working with them in certain ways. That's why, again, I say, if you got kids that are using it, swim in the soup with them and say, what are you learning? Show me what you're doing, and just kind of walk along with them. The worst thing that we could do is what we did with social media, which is just let them run amok,
figure it out later,
which, didn't turn out very well in some ways.
And so I kind of, as we begin to wrap up the conversation, there's two more questions I kind of have. One, looking at, as we sit today in September of 2025 and thinking about back on your career, is there an area of your career or a moment in your career that you think AI would have been even more helpful to help you get through that particular instance, that you're like, I wish what we have today was around then because I could have done this differently?
The easiest one is my dissertation work. And so, I was doing landmine detection was what my dissertation was on. Okay. I was taking the standard issue Army metal detector. We tapped into the receive coils, and we were able to look at the different signals that were coming off of it. And I had an algorithm that could not just separate mines from clutter, but I could classify that classifier of being able to tell you what manufactured mine that was, what country's mine that was. And so really learning the Bayesian techniques, the decision techniques for what does classification look like, kind of set the stage. But it was, I wrote, all my stuff was in MATLAB, which is, a dinosaur language, now, which I hate to say. Looking at the toolkits now and looking how far a lot of the machine learning has come, the toolkit, I mean, it's broken down and it's such lightweight and easy to apply in certain ways now, especially computer vision and machine learning. I mean, the algorithms are so lightweight and easy to train up very, very quickly.
Would the dissertation been easier to create, or would it have also been a better product that you would create now? Or do you like
hard to say? It's one of those things that you look back and it's almost comical, the analytical gymnastics that I went through, to get to the solution that I came up with.
Also, like explaining that to somebody now using the current models, right? It's like they're like, you did what?
I know, exactly. You kind of shake their head, and B, I probably couldn't explain my own dissertation 25 years later anyway. So just looking back at what the tools enable now is really just the speed of compute and the speed of algorithm. It's just fascinating, right? And so. Hard to say if it would have made any better of any more of a difference while I was at Phase 4 doing radar hardware. It's clearly having an impact today.
100%.
But early on, it was really about I don't know, the stuff we were doing. Maybe it would have been such a tuned model. I mean, certain cases, really knowing the difference between what a general purpose model is, like a ChatGPT, and then what a very tuned, a machine learning model is, very, very small scope, so, narrow AI versus, general AI.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it would have taken a while to kind of tune up to some of the very specific engineering problems that we were trying to solve.
Yeah.
So
it would have been a different, it's a different beast to even imagine. And like, it'd be interesting to see, and there's probably studies that have been done with projects that were done, maybe in the 90s versus projects that are the same project done today,
right,
with the current models we have, and like the effectiveness of that project would be interesting to kind of see. Cause I mean, it's progressed so quickly in such a short amount of time that I mean, there's no telling what this conversation would look like in a couple of years.
Yeah. One of the things that I do find interesting is they say in the medical field, a lot of the studies have, a tremendous amount of data that's just sitting there, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's actually a lot of groups that are wanting to go back and take multiple studies and look at data and see if there's any other latent signals that weren't in there to pull out, even more from historic research. So, I mean, it does you can't roll backwards with it, which I think is pretty cool.
That is awesome. And so, obviously, you've been in this position for not a long time,
right?
But you've kind of been able to navigate your way around what your role is, and it's obviously going to continue to develop and change over the next year and a half.
Right.
What do you kind of, as we wrap up, what is sort of your expectations and kind of goals looking at 2026, as that'll be here before we know it, and then kind of as you're positioning yourself, even maybe just to finish off this year, like what are some initiatives, what are some things that people can kind of maybe see, or you're hoping to do at your role with CIO?
Yeah, good question. I mean, again, 3 different organizations working with. I'd say with the city, It's really getting our use policy in place. It's communicate. We had a project that we ran into that we've had to slow down on and actually hit pause and pull it off. It was the cameras on the garbage trucks. And, it showed us that we need to listen, and that we need to, we need to make sure that we've got our house in order, such that when we engage on future projects similar to the one that we had, that there's trust built with the community, that we know what proper use is. We can explain who's got the data, where the data is going, who's got access to the data, who's, all of those questions. I think the trust is extremely important to make sure that we've got a groundwork that we can build that such that we can adopt these technologies and really see the efficiency that they do bring on the upside, but being aware and making sure that we're taking all precautions on the downsides of these technologies. And so, I want to make sure that we're standing on solid ground, between now and the end of the year, such that we can look into 2026 and really look across the landscape and say, where are other municipalities seeing benefits from these, and start pulling those into the city of Huntsville.
Yeah. And because like I said, there was no playbook, no blueprint when you got into this position. But as we were talking about a little bit off air, the CIO position has been around a little bit here and there in other cities and other states. But kind of as you were beginning to see more and more of these cities bring this position up, you kind of also, like, it's not reinventing the wheel at some point. Hey, what's working well with them? It might not work exactly the well for Huntsville with a different market, but it's something to think about. And so kind of having those conversations, having that dialogue, having the communication amongst your three bosses is always probably an interesting day, interesting month of just kind of figuring out what, and everything's changing so quickly. Right. And so I feel like this conversation we had today is definitely going to happen again, maybe near the end of your 2-year term, just because it's going to look a lot different.
Correct.
It's going to look a lot different by the end of the year, I think. But I appreciate I appreciate you being here today. It's been a lot of fun to kind of dive into a little bit about what being a CIO is for the city of Huntsville.
Yeah, appreciate it, Clark. It was good.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Beyond Rockets. Don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and on YouTube at Beyond Rockets. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Beyond Rockets to stay up to date with new episodes as they are released. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.